What is going on, No Horsing Around family? Zach Boyd back at it again. Going to talk about the injury report, getting everything ready, all things you need to know heading in to this week road game, pivotal road game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And to do that, I brought one of our best friends on here. We love hearing his thoughts, his opinions, and ideas. George, how you been, man? Busy times, huh?
Doing well. How are you, Zach?
Hey, I'm doing great myself. Hey, guys, before we start, just want to tell you about one of the partnerships that we've lined up with betstamp.com. If you're a bettor and you love just, playing in-game live betting, you love just hitting those overs, those unders, putting those parlays together, we partner with BetStamp. And the cool thing about BetStamp is you can go to one-stop shop all of the odds across all of the platforms and get the very best odds for you. So as far as that goes, you want to hit that over-under on that Jonathan Taylor on yards this week, that over-under on Michael Pittman Jr. You want to hit that over-under on, let's say Paris Campbell. You want to take a little bit of an extra step there. Go to betstamp.com, hit the No Horsing Around promo code. You'll get a bonus as you prompt in as well, and might win a little bit of money. But that being said, George, a little bit of injury news coming up this week. I think today's a big day, right? When we look at it, I think today is with Frank Reich anyways, Friday is always the day that he wants his veterans to practice. And if not, that's when the antennas and the red flags kind of come up, huh?
Yeah, but they canceled practice today, so it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. They're just doing a walkthrough now. We got a notification about that late last night. So that, to me, I'm just guessing, tells me that they're trying to get these guys through as well as they can, trying to take any extra hits or any extra physicality at all off of them ahead of Sunday's game. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the thing of it is, none of these injuries forced anybody out of the game on Sunday. So you always have to wonder, are they new injuries that cropped up during the practice week? Are they things that maybe adrenaline covered on Sunday and you didn't feel them until you got back in to the facility back in Indianapolis? But, lots of mystery surrounding the injury report this week for sure.
Yeah. Hey, so let me ask you this question. I don't guess I've ever really been a part of this. How frequent do they cancel practices? Like, is this a thing that they do, or is this just like a kind of an isolated incident where you just don't see it a lot in your world?
They've switched them to walkthroughs, at other times, but it's not common. It doesn't happen on a regular basis. It usually happens later in the year when the team's banged up and you're deciding to give them a little bit of a rest. The only thing I can figure is this is an attempt to get guys like Kenny Moore and Deforest Buckner, Michael Pittman, off their feet. Even if they can probably participate in a walkthrough, even if they weren't going to participate maybe in a full practice, just because, doing as much, obviously. But even if they don't, even if they're not out there for a walkthrough, which we won't know, there's no report on that. It'd just be an estimated, practice report today. But even if they don't take the reps, their mental reps are a lot closer to what everybody else is getting in that, scenario as well.
Yeah. So will you hear from Frank Reich today, or is that just a no-go? Just so he'll speak on it as far as that goes, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. He'll still talk around 1:30 after all that's done. And then we'll get open locker room after that. So you never know who's in there on a day like this. But yeah, to me, I think the only reason I can think of to go to a walkthrough instead of a regular practice is just to try to get those guys a little more rest and, let them have the best chance possible to be ready to go on Sunday.
Sure. Absolutely. I'd say that Pittman Jr. one's the one to really watch out for. We need Deforest Buckner, no doubt about it, all hands on deck. But, man, if you don't have Pittman Jr., that really, George, in my mind, who are you going to go to? And that's just a question. Who would you go to, George? I don't know that answer as a Colts fan. Who's the guy? Who steps up?
It would be committee. There's no way any one guy is going to come in there and do everything that he does. Be a little bit of Paris Campbell. There'd be a little bit of Mike Strawn. You hope that Alec Pierce will be ready to go as well. He wasn't. He was in a non-contact jersey, so I'm not sure where he is right now in his progression through the protocols, whether he'll be able to go. Ashton Doolin's going to have to come in and make plays. It would be a tough situation, and it's not just the passing game. I mean, he's obviously such a big part with his physicality. He's such a big part of opening holes downfield for Jonathan Taylor. If they have to go Sunday without Michael Pittman Jr., that will be a massive problem for this football team.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, it feels like Jacksonville, Georgia, as we kind of transition into that, they're getting a little bit better. They're young. Probably, I would say they're better coached at this point than they were this time last year. We all know about the debacle with Urban Meyer and all of that stuff. Seems like this is a football team that's re-energized. Had a real chance to beat the Commanders last week. They just weren't able to kind of close that deal. Temperament. I want to talk about that for a moment. A lot of Colts fans are kind of 50-50 on that. Darius Leonard has some statements that, it's just another game. He didn't want to make it bigger than it needed to be. Do you find that as just coach speak, players talking? Is there a real feeling internally inside that building that this game matters, not only for the fan base, the team, but that owner, man, that writes those checks, and the way he felt last year when we ended our season abruptly losing to Jacksonville? Or you just think that, hey, we have kind of that even keel demeanor that it really is just another game inside that locker room?
I'm sure in the owner's room, there's definitely a different feel for this game. I can't imagine he was happy with what he saw on Sunday in Houston. And I'm sure that's going to be highlighted again this week, going down to Jacksonville and bringing up all the memories of how last season ended and really how the last 8 years have gone down there. So I'm sure it means a little more to Jim Irsay, and that means it means a little more to the players and to the coaches. They're not going to say anything. I mean, that's kind of part of this game. You don't talk before the game. You don't give them any reason to, have bulletin board material. That's kind of status quo. I would imagine if you get, lie detector tests on everybody in there, there's a little extra edge. I mean, maybe not the guys who weren't here last year, but, a couple of the guys, Nyheim Hines in particular, talked about he's 0-4 in his career down there. So even without the way it ended last year, this matters a lot to him. They're tired of going down there and getting their butts kicked, basically. And then on top of all of that, it's critical division games. So you come into this season with expectations of winning the division. You come out of Houston with a tie. That's a missed opportunity for so many reasons in so many ways. You can't go down there. You can't come out of this opening 2-game stretch without a win. You've got to find a way to get a victory on Sunday. Take control of the division to the extent that you can this early now. Put yourself in a decent position because we know after this, Kansas City's coming in, Tennessee's coming in. Schedule gets a little rougher here immediately. And you can't, they're in danger of digging themselves another one of these early season holes that always seem to come back and bite them in December and January.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Kansas City, I don't know if anybody watched them last night in mid-season form already in week 2. And we all know about Patrick Mahomes, so that's going to be a challenge in itself. Expectations this week as we head in, George, just from you. What are you going to be watching? What do you need to see this week? Obviously, it's a big road game. It's a division game. We need to get the win. But what are you going to be looking at and saying, hey, this has got to change in order for us to start propelling and moving forward in the win column?
It all starts with the offensive line in my mind. They didn't have a good game last week against Houston. I think the numbers could have been even worse. I really feel like Jonathan Taylor and Matt Ryan did an awful lot in the backfield to kind of keep that, to keep tackles for loss and sacks to a minimum. I think the offensive line needs to pick it up. And really, if you go back through these 8 years in Jacksonville, that's one of the through lines here. I mean, every time they lose one of these games down there, they tend to get beat up front. So you've got 3 guys right now who are highly paid guys who are anchors of this line: Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, and Quentin Nelson. They've got to deliver. They've got to lead the way. I thought Nelson was fine on Sunday in Houston, as he usually is. But I think Ryan Kelly and Braden Smith will tell you themselves that they didn't play as well as their expectations are, as their standards are. And that just makes it tougher on guys like Danny Pinner and Matt Pryor and Bernard Raymond when he's out there. If your anchors aren't doing the job, it's harder for the new guys to kind of get in and get comfortable as well. they need to do it quick because Jacksonville, again, they're an improved football team. That's a better team than the one that beat the Colts last year, probably across the board. You've got defensive ends there that are a real problem. We know what Josh Allen can do. We've seen that for a couple of years now here in Indy. You throw in Tavian Walker, who they drafted with the first pick in April. Now all of a sudden you've got that tandem everybody wants. It's hard to focus on just one guy. It's probably going to limit the passing game in some ways. I can't imagine the tight ends are going to be out on routes as often as they were going to be. You're going to need them in for max protection. You're probably going to keep Jonathan Taylor on the field a little more often so that he can be a guy who can chip, block, protect Matt Ryan. You're going to need all hands on deck, and that's another reason why if Pittman's down, it's going to be that much harder because obviously if you're max protecting and you've got your running back there in the backfield as well, there's fewer options for Matt Ryan. We know he's going to try to get rid of the ball quick. The offensive line absolutely has to step up, do their job. If that doesn't happen, it's hard to find a way that the Colts win this game.
Yeah, man. Speaking of that offensive line, there was some really weird some exchanges between Ryan Kelly and Matt Ryan, George. Did we get any clarification this week as far as what happened there? I mean, usually a veteran tandem, you don't have to worry about that a whole lot. That was abnormal, huh?
It was bizarre. And I asked Matt Ryan about it immediately after the game. And, of course, he took full blame. What else is he going to do? Sure. But there was no real sense of what was causing that. I go back through that Houston game, 517 yards, you give up 299. You're thinking you probably won that game by multiple scores. But so many massive errors, not just little mistakes, 5 fumbles, an interception, 2 drop touchdown passes. That's just the offense. A massive penalty on special teams, roughing the punter that let them run out the third quarter. Imagine 6 more minutes in that game and the difference that could have made. The defense had a couple big penalties. The one that really stands out is the roughing the passer in the third quarter when the Texans are going down to extend their lead. You just can't do those kind of things, and to do all of them. And the thing of it is, you feel like there were 9 or 10 really big, major mistakes in that game. Erase one of them, and they probably win.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, I feel like, George, we've been in this cycle for a while, though, right? Like woulda, coulda, shoulda. Like at some point, we got to stop saying those things for this football team. And the Colts need to stop saying these things and just need to deliver, right? You've got all the players in place, and it's just you always feel like you're just a play or a series away from walking away with the win. But you also feel like good teams don't have to use those excuses. They just usually find a way to win. Now, obviously, we let them all the way down the field. Matt Ryan offense did their job, had a chance to kick that field goal. Blankenship did not make that field goal. It's a bitter end for me. I think he's a great guy. It was a business decision. At the end of the day, you can't cost your football team games. I fully expect Chase McLaughlin to get pulled up on game day. What say you, George Brimmer, when it comes to that?
Yeah, no clue. Chase is obviously the veteran here. You would think he's the leader in the clubhouse, but they kept Lucas Havrisk around for a reason. So, we really don't get much. We don't get to see a whole lot of practice right now. We saw them each kick at the beginning of practice the last 2 days, the rookie on Wednesday and Chase yesterday. There's not a lot to tell from that. It's going to be interesting to see. I think they both have really strong legs. I think the kickoff component of this is a big part of this. Those 2 kickoffs that went out of bounds, they're really lucky that didn't beat them. With Houston getting the ball at the 40 twice at the end of the fourth quarter. And, then again at the beginning of the overtime session, defense did a really good job there of just stepping up and getting the stops. But that played into the way the game ended too, because both of those times the defense gets 3 and out, they get a punt. And now all of a sudden the offense is pinned, and they wouldn't have been had you been starting in a normal field position there. We know the way the regulation drive ended. And then maybe that added yards to the end of the kick at the end of in overtime, or maybe it's the reason they weren't able to finish the drive and get in the end zone. It's hard to say. They got down to the 24, so there were a lot of things. If that's a shorter drive for the Colts to begin with. Again, it's all the ifs and buts here. But I think that kickoff component's a big part. It's not just the missed field goal. I think the kickoff component's a big part of the reason they made that switch. Both these guys have really strong legs, so you assume they're going to be able to put the ball in the end zone and at least take that part of the game away, as far as the concern goes.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, maybe even more. We said it on the live stream on Wednesday, maybe even more than the missed field goal. The kicking the ball out of bounds is almost just about a cardinal rule, almost inexcusable, if you think about it. And to do it 2 times in a row, just not a good look and really hard for them to keep you on the roster as it goes. Defensively, I just want to talk to you a little bit about how did you feel about the defense? As the game went on, I felt like they settled a little bit. Obviously, they had a couple blown coverages, with O.J. Howard basically having a resurrection game against the Indianapolis Colts there. Overall, nothing flashy. I was a little disappointed in the pass rush. But they settled in, They settled in a little bit, and I definitely think, George, there's something to work with there moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the rest of the team, you can say that they came when they needed them. They showed up, they finished well. The rest of the team, not including the kicker, obviously, but everybody else, I think the offense and the defense both got better there, obviously, in the fourth quarter, and both of them played well in overtime. But I just felt like you had a lack of impact plays. It was the fourth quarter before E.J. Speed really got that first turnover. I think that was the first sack too. So
yeah,
those are things you expect from this defense. They're going to give up some yards. It's going to be a bend but don't break scheme. Hopefully they're good in the red zone. I think that's the big thing. Those 2 touchdowns on that list of, woulda, coulda, shouldas. If you hold them out of the end zone even once there, but twice, which is their goal, again, you win the game in regulation. But, some communication issues back there that can't happen, spacing problems. Those are things that are going to show up in week 1. You got to find a way to overcome them. But I think on defense, getting Shaq Leonard back would be a really big lift because they didn't have that. I don't know if they didn't have the juice, but they didn't have that playmaker. There wasn't anybody out there. I can't even remember that many pass deflections, let alone interceptions. They really, it was a clean pocket too often for Davis Mills until late in the game again. Fourth quarter and overtime, they started getting to him. Kwity Paye, in particular, in overtime, really just short-circuiting one drive all by himself. But they've got it. That's what makes this defense good. When they're rolling, it's takeaways, it's sacks, it's getting their hands on passes, getting that ball down on the ground. You didn't see very much of that at all until late in the game. The one thing that I think was a huge concern coming in, that probably the one concern that didn't really rear itself during the game, was the run defense. And a lot of that goes to Grover Stewart. He quietly had a terrific game. That's a good running back, Dameon Pierce. I think he's going to have a good rookie season for Houston. That was a legit concern coming in that they did take care of. But you've got to get – this defense has got to get impact plays on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point, George. And I think just with Shaq Leonard being out of there, you just don't fear that, right? Like he's just a guy, when the quarterback's out there, he feels a little more comfortable, not to any slight on Bobby Okereke, but you just don't fear that guy when he's not on the field. His presence alone, changes the dynamic of that defense in its totality. And we all know that Shaq Leonard is a ball magnet, punching the ball out. He just finds his way around the football as far as that goes. All that being said, all the bad, and we're still tied at the top of the AFC. Nobody won in the AFC South. So a big chance. Like, this is a big game, and this is a very big opportunity moving forward, George, for us to just kind of – and it's really going to happen quickly. We're going to have so many division games at this first part of the season to really, have a stranglehold on this division. If you just go out and do what you're supposed to do on the road against Jacksonville, and we all know that Tennessee is going to be playing against the Buffalo Bills, which is not going to be any easy challenge, we're still going to have a really good chance at doing our ultimate number one goal, which is to win the AFC South.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's changed in that regard from this opening week, but I think this is an inflection point now. Usually you don't feel that way in week 2. Even if they lost the week 1 game, it doesn't have quite the sense of doom hanging over it that this one does. Part of that's the fact that was an extremely winnable game on last week. one they absolutely should have won. And to see that get away, there's got to be some frustration and some anger there. But now, because of what you just talked about, you're in the stretch. 5 of your 6 division games come in the first 7 weeks of the season. That's going to determine a lot about how this year goes. You've already missed one opportunity to come out and miss a second one against the 2 teams that you don't think are going to be in the title chase when all is said and done. It's, you hate to say must win in week 2, but this feels very much like a must win. You don't come out of here with a victory, and it's going to change a lot about the way the rest of this season feels for this football team.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it, all week long, right or wrong, whether you agree or disagree. If they don't win this football game, it's going to be a long week for Frank Reich, answering questions. And we can get into the debate of this, that, and the other philosophy. But regardless, it falls on the quarterback. It falls on the coach. It just always does. So you get all the credit when you're doing great, and you get all the credit when you're doing bad. So that's just how it kind of transpires. One question I did want to ask you before we hop off here. Isaiah Rodgers, no defensive snaps. He's a ball magnet. I don't quite understand that philosophy when it comes down to it. No slide on Brandon Faison. I think he's a solid player. You're not going to get a lot of flash from him. But, man, wouldn't you like to see and find a way to get that guy on the football field a little bit, George?
Absolutely, especially in a game like that where there were no impact plays. I mean, we talk about that. He's a guy that in 9 snaps against Buffalo in the preseason, he had 2 turnovers, and granted, that's preseason, and I understand that, but that's a crazy number no matter what. I mean, you're in a high school game and you do that. People are going to raise their eyebrows and be impressed. And he's shown it again and again regular season. We're not talking about a rookie. You're not quite sure what he's going to do. Every time he's out there on the field, he's making plays on the ball. He's very aggressive. His speed, his ball handling. That was one of the bigger surprises to me that he didn't get any snaps on defense. I know they like Brandon Faison. I know they like his length and his ability to play press coverage. But you got to figure there's a spot in there somewhere. And again, who knows? I mean, if Kenny Moore can't go, then Isaiah Rodgers is going to get quite a bit of playing time on Sunday. So I think he's got to get out there. Whatever they've got to do, they've got to find somebody who could get in there and get some turnovers, get some splash plays. That defense really didn't have enough of those, and you would expect them to in a game like that against Houston. That's when they won those 2 blowout games last year. That had a lot to do with it, turnovers and sacks, and putting them in really tough positions. And it really didn't happen until it was late in the game last week.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, EJ Speed kind of saved the day for us a little bit when it comes to that. Not only a sack but getting the fumble as well. I don't know, man. I just think 34 needs to be on that field. You mentioned I don't know really how to explain it in an elegant way, but I would say this that when the ball's up in the air, Isaiah Rodgers seems to be around that football. Even dating back, I mean, you can even go back as far as that playoff game against the Buffalo Bills in his rookie season where he had to go out there in the middle of an injury, and he's right there. He's around that football. Making some incredible athletic plays. It'll be interesting to see how the season goes moving forward. George, what do you expect this week? You expect us to come out and rebound and play a really, really good game, or is it a coin flip?
Honestly, this team's lost the benefit of the doubt with me. I mean, I expected them to come out and play a really good game last week because of the way last season ended, and all the talk during the offseason about changes and, what it meant for this organization. And they came out, and for 3 quarters, it looked a lot like last year. Now, I think going back and rewatching the tape, it really didn't look like last year. It was more self-inflicted. And Jacksonville, I think, last time around whipped this team. And I thought this week 1 game had a lot more to do with the Colts and what they weren't doing than what Houston was doing to them. But as a result of that, I really, I can't give them the benefit of the doubt. They haven't won in Jacksonville in 8 years. They're not healthy. They're really banged up going into this game. I don't have a good feeling about this one, I'll be honest.
Yeah, man. I would like to lie and pretend that I feel really confident that we're going to walk into Jacksonville. But I would say I'm a lot like a lot of Colts fans. I'm a little bit exhausted by the talk and the hyperbole. I mean, I'm a little bit worn down by that when it comes to it. At some point, I'd probably like to hear less of the talk and a little bit more action on the football field when it comes to that. Hopefully we get our vocal leader, Shaq Leonard, back this week, and hopefully Michael Pittman Jr. and Deforest Buckner can kind of make it through and play because we're going to need all hands on deck. George, man, I really appreciate you hopping on. I know you've got the podcast going. You're writing out there. You're a busy guy, but thanks for taking the time to hop on, man.
No problem. Thanks a lot, man.
Absolutely. Guys, here it is. You got the injury report. We got the Friday review. Thank you so much for all the subscribers. We've gained 100 subscribers this week. We had a 5,000 view video. You guys have been great. Light us up in the comments. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Let us know what you think about the Jacksonville Jaguars game. You expect us to come out and be dominant? Are you worried a lot like George and I are? Hit us with the comments. We'll respond back just as quick as we can. And as always, go Colts.